Aparna? All right. Can everyone see and hear me?
Yes.
All right. So since I'm not going to be looking at the screen, I'm going to switch my camera off. Kind of awkward for me to talk with the camera on, looking at myself. So I'm hoping that if at some point of time you lose me, my internet is not great. So if someone can just ping me on WhatsApp, I'll see that. All right.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Aparna, what you can do is you can go into gallery view, so you won't be able to see you. So you won't feel uncomfortable. Right now, you yeah. So it will be recording as you as a person, but you will be seeing the whole gallery where we all are there. You need to go to the view.
Not really sure. I'm on my phone, so I do not know how to do that.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
Let her be comfortable.
Don't worry about it.
All right. Is it okay if I don't have my video on? Because
absolutely
not
fine.
a very public
okay.
speaker kind of a person.
Fine, Aparna. Do as you feel is right. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So just. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes. So since we just had this discussion a couple of days ago, and I basically had one day to come up with certain points for this talk. I think I could have done better, but all I have right now is a couple of points jotted down in front of me, and I'm going to just elaborate on that. So guys, please bear with me. All right, so let's start. So this topic is gender identity. Let me start with a story. Once upon a time, to be specific, in the year of 1931, there was an Austrian scientist. His name was Theodor Erisman. He created goggles which could turn your vision completely upside down. That means when you wear the goggles, everything that you see is upside down. For about a week, he tried to wear those goggles and walk around. He fell everywhere. But from the fifth day, his brain adapted to the vision that he was seeing with the goggles, and he started to see everything normal. Why am I telling you this story? Why is it relevant to this topic? Because I want you to think of what your brain can do. Your brain is capable of so much more than you can comprehend. Any new information, any idea is actually brain food. It helps us to adapt and evolve as a person and together as a society. So let me start with this as the ground. I'm attempting today to go in between the lines of gender and to help everyone to understand gender identity in a different perspective, and maybe use some research-based evidence to give you a different outlook on gender identity. Let me start with explaining a couple of terminologies. We have heard a lot of terminologies, and probably we do not understand them in depth. So gender, what is gender? So the World Health Organization has defined gender as a social construct that people typically describe in terms of femininity and masculinity. This time, I will take a small deviation here because it looks relevant. There is a theory which is called the cultural dimension theory. I'm sure some of you definitely might have seen it, by Gerd Hofstede. He is a Dutch social psychologist. So he has given a couple of dimensions, which is called the Hofstede dimensions. Not going to go through each and every one of them, but one of them is called femininity versus masculinity. So what is femininity and masculinity according to him? So he says that every society itself has a feminine or masculine kind of a character. So a masculine society would actually complement achievement and heroism and assertiveness, whereas a feminine society stands for cooperation, modesty, caring, or for the weak and quality of life kind of things. So countries like United States, Mexico, Japan, they're all considered to be masculine. So in a masculine society, the gender roles are very distinct. Men are supposed to be very tough, and they're supposed to earn a lot for the family and have career successes and things like that. And women are supposed to be modest, tender, and they are supposed to care for life. Other cultures like Sweden and Netherlands and Costa Rica, they have a sort of feminine culture. That means that the society would view men and women as kind of modest, tender, and both men and women want quality of life rather than career achievements or what do you say, finance, money, kind of economic greatness, things like that. So you should know that there is no society, no country, the countries that even I mentioned, none of them are highly, completely masculine or completely feminine. It is a range. And these countries that I mentioned falls towards both extremes. That does not mean they're completely feminine or masculine. It's just a spectrum. So there is a term that I think is relevant here. It's called ethnocentrism, which means that everybody is proud of the culture that they come from. So the people who come from masculine culture say that we are superior, and the ones that come from feminine culture think that, you know, we are right and we are better. So as people who are interested in psychology, and not in India generally, but when if you ever travel abroad, you will see, you will have to deal with, as a psychologist, you will have to deal with people with a lot of, who come from different cultures. So to become a good intercultural communicators, we should understand that we can view a culture from its own point of view rather than viewing it from our context. That means that we can look at it from an outside point of view without, you know, thinking, without bringing this ethnocentrism kind of a thing to us. All right, so that's about gender and all those things. Let me continue with the terminologies. General population as such and the scientific community is very confused with these terms. There are around 64 to 78 different kinds of terms used to identify different genders. I'm not going to go through all of them. It's a lot. So just a few that we are all familiar with. What is gender identity? Gender identity is what a person thinks of himself, as in the personal sense of an individual's gender. What is gender expression? Gender expression means what I want the world to see me as, how the person wants to be perceived in the world. There is another term called cisgender. So that means a person who identifies with the sex they were assigned to at birth. Coming to the next term, which is transgender. We have heard this term a lot, but I think I have a little bit information that most of you might not be aware of. I do not know. So it is actually an umbrella term. It just says that a person who does not identify himself with the sex that he was assigned to. But this is the most important part. He has not received any gender reassignment surgeries. That means if he was born with a male or female genitalia at birth, even though he does not identify himself, he or she or whatever, does not identify themselves as the gender that they were assigned to at birth, they have not changed their gender surgically. There is something called transvestite. These are the individuals you have seen ample times in India. These are the people who cross-dress. You know, men who wear a sari and who walk around, we have all seen them. They're called transvestites. They're not transgenders. They are transvestites. They have no desire to change their sex biologically, but they like to dress up as the other gender, that's all. And of course, there are other terms, that is male to female and female to male, MTF and FTMs, where people actually undergo surgery and change their gender. But that's called transsexual. But that term is not used
Sorry,
much.
Aparna, what did you say? The trans? What did you tell that term?
Transsexual.
No. What is that? Can you spell it? Like
Transvestite.
What is that? Can you spell that?
It is TRANSVESTATE.
Okay.
Transvestite.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So the transsexual term is not something that you're supposed to use because people perceive it as offensive, I guess. So you usually don't use that term. But ideally, what a transsexual means is that the person was born with another gender at birth and they have changed their gender. A lot of people are there like that, but you just don't refer them that way. Anyways, coming to the next term, that is called gender fluidity. What does that mean? So if a person is not sure what his identity is and he's not sure what he wants to express it as, that is called gender fluidity. I'll explain it. It means that over time, if a person changes his identity or expression or both, it keeps on changing over time, then that is gender fluid. So some people are gender fluid. I think a lot of people are gender fluid, just that they do not choose to express it. They know that by themselves, but they do not express it as such. Now, I think terminologies, all these terms are okay. And if there is no confusion, I can continue. All right. So let's just look around. Humans are not just the only species on Earth. There's so many other species on Earth. There is other animals, there are birds. So how about homosexuality in animals? Do you think it's there? Do you think animals are homosexual or bisexual or transgender or whatever? Turns out, yes, they are. So let's understand homosexuality in the animal kingdom before we come to humans. All right. So in the year 1910, a team of scientists, they went to Antarctica to study penguins. So there is a large, different species of penguins. So one of the largest group of penguin colonies, these scientists went there to see how it is. So there was one person who is actually a zoologist. His name was George Lewick. He stayed there and he looked at these penguins and he documented every little details of their lives. This was in 1910. So he even witnessed same-sex behavior in male birds. But when he published his papers later, he excluded these things, because of social stigma or whatever. He did not want to be taken not seriously. Even scientists who publish their works, they kind of worry about people questioning the authenticity of their work. They put so much hard work into it and they don't want just a couple of things to spoil it for them. So it's very much understandable why he excluded these things in that time. But what he did was he printed out a couple of copies and he circulated it between his peers and people who he must have trusted or something. Anyways, these papers, it came out after a lot of time. And when it came out, that was the time when society was discussing about homosexuality or all these things, gender fluidity. And this paper suddenly had a lot of relevance. So turns out that around 1,000 species of animals have exhibited same-sex behavior. Homosexuality is widespread in animal kingdom. And it's seen not just in animal kingdom, everywhere in the nature. I'll give you a case study. So in 2018, in an aquarium in Sydney, Australia, zookeepers noticed that there were 2 male penguins who adopted an egg from another heterosexual penguin couple. So these 2 male penguins, they started to gel together and they built a nest together. So people got interested as to why these 2 male penguins built a nest together. So they decided to test that and take it a step forward by giving them an egg from another heterosexual penguin couple. Turns out that these 2 male penguins were able to take care of that egg and it finally hatched into a beautiful baby penguin. That study gained a lot of popularity. Again, a similar study with spider monkeys. I don't know if you have heard of spider monkeys. They are New World primates. And if you know, there are 2 kinds of primates, Old World primates and New World primates. Old World primates is where humans are more closely related to. They have different shape of their nose. But New World primates, they are a different set. They evolved due to geographical migrations and things like that. Not important. So basically, the spider monkeys, they exhibit homosexual relationships, behaviors that was noted and reported in, I think, a couple of years ago. So that was very surprising because homosexuality is seen in humans, scientists thought that, okay, old world primates, because they are more similar to humans, they might have it. But new world primates who completely migrated to a completely different area and evolved in a very separate way also exhibit homosexuality, which means that in evolution terms, homosexuality was not very uncommon. But why was this not a news a couple of years ago? Why did scientists not study about homosexual behaviors up until this time? There is an answer to it. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Darwin's theory of evolution. Are you familiar with it or no? Can someone answer?
Yeah. I think.
Okay. Yes. So in Darwin's theory, what he says is that if something, character,
survival of the fittest.
yes, something like that. So not just the fittest, if a species has to exhibit some kind of characteristic, that has to add some value to the species itself. Otherwise, it just gets eliminated through evolution. And the process is called natural selection. If you want an example, you can think of third molars. I'm a dentist, so I'll give you a teeth example. So third molars, earlier, as in a couple of generations ago, most people had third molars. Now, if you look at it, most people don't. Why? We changed our diet so much that third molars have lost their relevance. Now, after a couple of generations, there won't be three molars. There'll be just two molars. These are kind of little changes that you see in every species. Every species has that. But here, if you look at it, homosexual behavior is a paradox. As in, if you look at Darwin's theory, what does such behavior yield? What is the advantage of having such behaviors? If you just look at it, if you look at the behavior as such, it looks like it's a really bad idea. Animals should not engage in homosexual behaviors because it clearly is a waste of time, energy, and resources, and there is no obvious gain because you do not get an offspring out of it, right? So there is a professor at the Imperial College in London. His name is Vincent Savolianian. He is a world-renowned biologist. So he actually questions some of the things that Darwin said, and he has conducted a lot of research, and he has actually come up with a chapter that actually explains, and a lot of papers have been published. It's all available on PubMed, asking why certain animals behave this way. And he has found a lot of things. I'll just tell you a few of them. So this evolutionary paradox, if you want to call it, it should ideally contribute something to the animal's well-being, and why it has continued for so long, something should come out of it. That's what got the scientists thinking, okay, let's find out why these animals do it and what is the benefit they're gaining out of it. Turns out that, there are benefits. There was a turning point in 1999, a book called Biological Exuberance was published by a person called Bruce Bagman. So he published that book, and that contained a lot of information pertaining to this area that acted as a turning point, and more people started to understand why animals behave in this way. One of the reasons that scientists say is that homosexuality boosts individual reproductive success. Turns out that animals which engage in homosexuality have more chances to conceive an offspring than the ones that do not. If I have to give you another context, the species of gull, they engage in homosexual relationships because of shortage of males in that species. So rather than having no offspring at all, a female will bind with the offspring, will have a nest with another female, and they will co-parent the offspring and form a normal female to female pair instead of a male to male pair. Another benefit that the scientists found out was that homosexual behavior in animals promote social cohesion. Most animals, they want to live in herds, in groups. So it was another way to promote social cohesion in animals. A lot of other studies were conducted. One of the study that pertains to humans in this, like, I know I'm deviating a little bit, but I just remembered it. It was conducted in Samoa. They found that gay men devote more time with their nephews and nieces and other children in the family than normal men. So that promotes kind of a a special bondage or relationship, maybe something similar to what was found in animals. That's what it means by social cohesion. So there are, like I said, species where what do you say, there was shortage of males engaged in homosexual behavior, but there is one species that behaves in a homosexual way even though there are opposite sex available for partners. That species is the domestic sheep. We all know about sheep. A study was conducted on flocks of sheep where they found that around 8 to 10% of males prefer other male sheep, even though fertile female sheep are available around. When they looked at the brains of these sheep, they found that their brains was different from those of who did not choose another male companion. Rather, they chose a female companion. So now expanding this to humans, there is a PhD student in Savolian's lab in Imperial. His name is Tom Vesalius. He is looking at humans and he's trying to attempt, he's a PhD student. So so maybe he already got his PhD, I'm not sure. He was looking at why we choose a mate the way we do, whoever it is, homosexual or heterosexual couple, why we choose our males, what are the mate choice decisions, what are the considerations behind it, are they biological considerations or social compatibility kind of considerations? So he was looking, so he has a lot of questionnaires, and he also has 3D face models and other stuff that he was doing, genetic sequencing and all of that, to study why we choose a mate the way we do. So he was looking for homosexual and heterosexual couples to study it in reproductive and non-reproductive context. I have his email address if someone wants to get in touch with him. I am sure he'll be happy to talk about it. Anyways, so now coming to one of the things that is my favorite topic is the brain. So if you look at the brain, look at the brain and say if a person is gender fluid or transsexual or whatever. Can you understand, is there any change in the brain? Turns out, yes, you can see it. There are differences. But before going into all that, let's understand what is the difference between a man's brain and a woman's brain, just the binaries. So most of you must have heard of books like Women Are From Venus and Men Are From Mars and things like that. Men and women are so different. And, why are you behaving like a woman? Why are you behaving like a man? All these things come because every one of us is aware of the fact that men are different and women are different. They interact and behave and respond in a different way. So there has been lots and lots and lots of studies done on human brain because it's a very complex organ. So all these studies have shown that memory and neural function and cognition, even perception and feelings, everything is different in a man's brain and a woman's brain. So if you take two people, a man and a woman, who have same intelligence, and you just give them a task, they both complete it in the same way. And if you look at their brains, they operate in an entirely different ways. They use different parts of their brain to encode memories, to feel emotions, even to recognize someone's face or make decisions or to solve problems. They entirely use different parts of the brain. It's actually really, interesting to look at it and to see how different we are, even though we all are same, we are all humans, but it's like nature's way of making us, it's very unique. So now if you talk about brains of gender fluid or transgender people, first let me familiarize you with a couple of words. So there is something in your brain that is called stria terminalis, or if you want a complex term, it's called VNST. So that is a fiber. It's a complex structure, but to put it in a simple words, it is kind of fibers that connect different parts of your brain, like the midbrain and the brainstem regions and all of this. So this structure, why am I talking about it? It's very important because it is important to understand your emotion and your response to stress or whatever. It is very important. And to identify yourself, your sex, is this part plays a very important role. So in the first study to show that the brain of a transsexual person is different from that of a cisgender person. A study was done in around 1995 or something, where they looked at this particular structure because they knew that it plays a very important role in the sexual behavior. So they found that this particular point or striatum terminalis is larger in men than women. A female-sized striatum terminalis was found in male to female transsexual. So the people who are born as males but who chose to change their gender to females, this structure was found to be similar. Already it was similar to that of female. And it is not under the influence of hormonal therapy or anything of that sort. So that means these people were born that way. So another study where they understood that, these things were not under the influence of sexual hormonal therapy and all these things. And in adulthood, not even the hormones that happen in your own body. Even before that, this structure was found to be different. This was the first study that actually showed that gender identity is something that you're born with. It's there in your brain. That means this is the first study that said that a person who struggles with gender identity is not doing so because he chooses to. He is born that way. And, this is the first study that pushed people to study more about it.
Can you please repeat that part of that brain, which you said for the transgenders?
Yes, it's called stria terminalis. Maybe it's called bed nucleus of stria terminalis. That is the exact term, BNST.
BNST, okay.
Yes. All right. So moving on. So after the study, a lot of people started to find out, okay, are there more differences? Is there anything else going on? So as you know, there are various ways to study brains. One of them is called fractional anisotropy, which means that, it's a kind of a diffusion imaging technique where you look at the cells of the brain. As you are aware of, brain has cells that is called neurons. Neurons look like stars, as in the body looks like a star, and they have a little tail that's called axon. This tail is wrapped in something called an insulating material kind of a thing that's called myelin sheath. All these things, the little structures, any minute changes in these structures causes huge difference in an individual. So using diffusion imaging techniques called fractional anisotropy, people were attempting to measure the white matter. So the brain has white matter and gray matter. So they measured white matter connections in different parts of the brain. And the study, they took around 40 transgender people who were female at birth, and then 27 transgender women who were male at birth, and homosexual people, also heterosexual and cisgender people as controls. Controls as in to test against it, to see how these are different. So when they looked at these studies, they showed that there were a lot of difference in the FA values of the brains of both transsexual females and transgender males. If you want the terminologies, I can give it to you, but I don't think, I think I made my point. If you want the studies, I have it with me. I can maybe probably share it with you or something if you want to read about it. So there are a lot of structures in the brain that they found that, for example, right inferior fronto-occipital tract, which is basically fibers that run between the lobes of the brain. They found that there are so many changes differences between these structures in these people. So these findings suggest that there are neuroanatomical signature of transgenderism in the brain, and that is why the body that affects the perception of self and what you feel like. Everything comes because there are differences that is measurable in your brain. There are a lot of other studies that also showed that
differences from what, if I may interrupt?
Differences from, as in, see, the cisgender group, the study that I mentioned before. So they took 40 people. 40 people.
I elaborate my question a little bit. So you're saying there are differences in the brain structures of certain segment of people. So you're taking something as a standard
Yes, the standard is the cisgender people, as in the people who identify cisgender people. If you remember the definition that I talked about in the beginning, cisgender people are people who identify with the sex that they were assigned to as they were born. As in, if I was said that I am a woman, I'm a girl when I was born, and I identify myself when I grew up as a woman, then I am cisgender.
Got it. And the deviations of these two groups from the normally male identifying as male and
Yes,
female
a female.
identifying as
Yes,
female, is that also studied?
yes. So that is the study. So what they did,
That's also different. So there's a deviation. There's a deviation between normal man, when I say normal, man who identifies as
cisgender. That
yeah.
is called cisgender.
So there is
Yes.
a standard brain structure for a female brain. There is another
Yes.
standard structure for a male brain. There are deviant aberrations in brain structure itself for other gender identities.
No, you know what? So let me just explain it a little bit. So the cisgender people, the one that you said, the person who is born a man, born a boy and becomes a man, you know what? Those people are called cisgenders, or a person who is identified as a girl and identifies as a woman when she grows up. So that is cisgender, right? That is taken as control. Control means these are the brains that you first look at, and you do something called FA studies, which is a fractional anisotropy. That means that it's not ideally structure. Structure as in when you look at it, you
I
can
do
see,
understand
okay.
where you're going with this. My question was, when you have taken this comparative formulation, you have taken two different groups
Not
within.
two, sir, four. So
Okay,
in this study, they've taken four groups. One is the transgender men. Next, that is 40 people, 27 people of transgender women, then homosexual people, both 29 males and 30 females, heterosexual people, that is 40 males and 40 females. So that is the cisgender generation that you're talking about. Those are the controls. So what they did here
and we
was
know
that
that there are differences in the brain structures. Carry on, please.
not structures. There are no difference in structures. There are
What is the
changes.
differences we're talking about? Is it structural or is it biological? What kind of differences are we talking about? So there are differences, at least. That's clear.
The way the brain is connected, the connections in the brain, if I
That is
can.
our chemical. So the chemicals are different. Chemical levels
No,
are different.
no chemicals. There are neural connections. So there are like millions of cells in
Neurons are
the brain, right?
biological. So there are biological differences.
You can call it neuroanatomical differences.
Neuroanatomical. Okay. Anatomy
Okay.
is the structure in which biology is geographically distributed. So basically, it's biological differences.
Uh, no, not biological. See, when you say biological differences, right, it means I don't know how to explain this.
Okay, I think
So,
you have clarified the thing to my satisfaction. You can continue.
all right, okay. So again, so the next study that I was talking about was, like I said, the functional anisotropy was a way to measure how things diffuse in your brain. So that gives you an idea of the connections between different neurons and different structures of the brain inside it. It's not really that, if you look at it from outside, it's all, you cannot look at a brain and say, okay, this person when, was this and this person is this. No, even for a male and female also, you cannot say that. You have to do studies like this to understand where exactly these are minute differentiations that you understand only by certain techniques. If you just do an MRI, there is no difference. If you do a
That
CT,
you have
absolutely
already
no difference.
clarified, right? You have clarified that the brain structure for male and female are entirely different. Even the area we use for different purposes are totally different.
Structures are same, sir. So for example, the structures are same, just that the way you use it is different.
Yes, so it's clearly identifiable.
Yes.
Good then. Let's move on.
All right. So there was another study that was conducted where there were 25 males and females were taken as control groups, and there were around 23 female to male transsexuals and 21 male to female transsexuals were taken. They were all studied before they were given hormone therapy, as in before, to eliminate the confounding factor, which is a hormone therapy. So they did another study where, if you are aware of, there are structures called hemispheres in the brain. So there are different lobes in the brain. There are this left side and the right side, and both sides has different lobes. Even the left and right side is not same. So the lobes are also different sized and shaped. The way these lobes connect to itself was different in this study where they compared with 25 male and female cisgenders. So this was actually reflected in a regional level. This was one of the studies that gained a lot of popularity because this was I'm not sure of this sentence that I'm about to say that, but such studies, especially this one, was taken as standard when people started to address homosexuality or gender fluidity in countries where it is accepted widely these days. So now, I gave you a lot of examples in brain studies and animal studies and all of this. Let's just take a moment, all of us, and just let's think about it. Where do we stand? Sure.
Was there any studies in the same lines where similar studies were conducted in a country where homosexualism was absolutely acceptable, like Netherlands, for example, versus a country where it was absolutely rejected? I don't want to name any country, but there are countries. And was there anything seen that in the countries like Netherlands, this kind of changes drastically reduced?
What do you mean reduced?
I mean, just curious. Any studies in those lines you are aware of?
What do you mean reduced?
So basically, does acceptance make any difference in the structure of the brain? Let's say if people around accept it.
Yeah.
No. Environmental confounders were removed, if that was your question. Environmental confounders were removed from all these studies. Yes.
My question was, does social acceptance help?
Yes, that is the environmental confounders that was removed.
Removed in the sense, are you saying that environment doesn't matter for both cases? So, the brain remains same, or
no? See, these studies, right? These studies were done after they removed the environmental confounders, as in if the person is socially accepted or not, that was removed. So that is not a criteria.
Okay, so what impacts of this biological structural?
So this is purely, yes. So see, they were trying to find out if there is any difference in the brain of these people, right? So they do not want any confound. So all hormonal, environmental.
There are differences in the brain. Okay, fine.
Yes, that's all. All these confounders like that comes from outside, environmental or hormone therapy or treatments, everything was eliminated. Okay. And then this was done so that their study is more credible, right?
Yeah,
the credibility increases.
Exactly credible. I'm just trying to figure out the intention of the study. Are we trying to prove that they have a different brain structure? We all agree with that. Yes.
They are not the hypothesis. If you're asking about this study, the first one, right? The first study, the hypothesis was that gender identity develops as a result of an interaction between development of the brain and sex hormones. The first study that I mentioned about the differences, if you remember, I mentioned a structure called stria terminalis, right? So that case, the study was done to see if there was a relationship between hormones. So that was the hypothesis of that study. Do you understand?
No, I didn't get that hypothesis. What were they trying to prove? If there are differences, of course, good hypothesis. Was there anything beyond that? How was it? How was the hypothesis connected with the social relevance?
No, sir. See, I took out this study particularly because it was the first study that was done on this context that we're talking about. But the hypothesis of the study was not that. The hypothesis was to identify that, I'll repeat it again, if the gender identity develops as a result of interaction between hormones and the brain. That was the hypothesis. And they showed that it is not. They said disproved it in that study.
Okay, so they disproved that sexual identity is not controlled by the brain.
Is not influenced by sex hormones in adulthood. That was the thing that they found in the study. So they disproved their hypothesis. Got it? Did I confuse you?
Yeah, royally actually.
This study is just walk out of this context. Okay, this coming with a fresh eye. There was a study that was done to know if gender identity matter develops after the brain interacts with hormones. So that was what they were showing. Does it affect or not? So when they looked at this structure that is called the stria terminalis, they found out that the hormones do not influence it.
What is beating me in that is that the brain being the triggering point of
Hormones, as in sir, sex hormones. Not
Any hormones. So
there.
brain
Yeah, there are
being-
so many other hormones, growth hormones, pituitary
let's
hormones.
speak
There's so
about
many other
sex
hormones, right?
for this ones.
Just sex
Brain-
hormones.
Yeah, brain being the start inducer of sex hormones in a human
Yes.
body.
Yes. So
Rolling
that's why I
back
mentioned.
to the effects of hormones on brain itself. I
Yes.
don't see the point of the study at all, because the beginning that we are basically saying that brain has an impact on brain itself.
No. You know what? When you are an adolescent, that's when these hormones are secreted in your body, right? When you are a child, it's not, right?
Yeah, and
Yes.
directed
So
by the
these
brain.
people, they were studying adolescents. They were studying children who were before they hit puberty.
Okay.
So they looked at the brains of such people, as in their as body is not into puberty, where they do not have the brain, the secretion of these hormones has not happened yet. So now they're going to look at it and they're going to see.
You are missing my question. So brain being the reason for these hormones to be what they are, and they studied the hormones effect back on the brain, means basically we are saying the brain's effect on itself somehow, right? So I'm trying to see what is the point you're bringing to the table with this study.
All right. So do you want the point? The point is that hormonal therapy or the hormone influence in your body, for example, okay, I'll just put everything down and I'll tell you that the study was aimed to show that some people are born in certain ways. Everybody is born different. Your brain is different from the time you're born. Does not mean that once I'm an adolescent,
got it.
I am going to choose it,
Continue,
right?
please. Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Everyone agree with that. Everyone is born different. Let's continue, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So if anyone has any more questions about any of these studies, I'm happy to continue. Shall I? Is everything clear?
Continue actually, because Prahash, when you interrupt, no, we are not able to get the discussion here. Finish up whatever talk she says, and then if we can go back and discuss, it will be nice.
All right. Okay. So enough about studies. So I think I explained the gist of it. I think most of you got the gist of it. So let's take a moment and think. Where do we stand as an individual and maybe as a society? Where do we stand in all of this? What does gender identity mean to us as an individual? Are we strictly adherent to the socially dictated gender roles that, maybe probably your grandparents followed? Or are you a little bit flexible when compared to them? Am I a man who loves to cook, even though my grandfather didn't know how to make a cup of tea? Or am I a woman who drives, maybe rides a bike or a car? And my grandmother never even, drove a bicycle, something like that. Where do we stand? Are we like, if you just think about it, the gender roles and the gender identity as a continuation itself is something that we are all bending. We are all not so strictly following what we knew or what people used to follow a couple of years ago. So all these things, isn't it changing around us, like right now even, and it is changing within us as well. So from the moment you're born, this gender is born with you. Most of us have heard, congratulations, is it a boy or a girl? As an educated group of people, we can choose to agree or disagree with anything and everything that I just talked about. But if I was able to trigger some questions, like I think I did, I will think that this time was useful and whatever I intended to do was a success. I do not hope to hurt or, anybody's feelings, but my hope while I was thinking about talking about this was just to present a world full of colors to everybody in my generation and the generations to come, not just pink and blue. So whatever we choose to believe, whatever you want to believe, you can do that. A gender neutral society or otherwise, whatever it is, let's all just choose and work towards a society that is built on mutual respect. That's all from me, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Aparna. Very informative session.
Thank you.